Dan Friedrich. Do you live in Hyde Park or just work in Hyde Park?
Live.
Oh, okay. He's a longtime Hyde Parker, and he's very active in a lot of community activities. He's a member of the Augustana and of the Hyde Park Chamber, which is where I met him. And he's, um, well, he was our keynote speaker, I think, a few years ago at one of our fundraisers, and he's spoken with the men's group, but he's never spoken since that fundraiser. He's never spoken to the whole village. So he agreed to come to us today. He's an alum of Second City and a tech guru, and he probably knows more about AI than most of us put together. He's taught, consulted, problem solved for lots of various organizations in business or in government. And so he's going to bring some provocative questions to us with his own opinions and invite questions. Is that fair?
Well done.
Sounds good. Okay, sounds good.
All right. Should I start?
Yes.
Please.
All right. So let me first ask, who on this call is passionate about this subject?
Well, there's all sorts of emotions about
Yeah.
the subject. I'm not sure passion is one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna guess that maybe not everybody is, and but my goal is by the end, at least one of you will be passionate. No, I hope everyone will be more passionate about the subject, and I hope to have triggered you to be passionate through my provocative points. So the idea of this presentation is to step through maybe 10 or so what I call provocations, which are statements I want to make about the state of AI, of artificial intelligence today, and what I think its impact will be. And the purpose, I believe all of these are true. I'm not just going to say things to get a response. I believe they're true, but I want to create a conversation here. And so I really want people to interrupt all the way along, and then we'll have a more dedicated conversation at the end. I thought about doing a whole bunch of slides and data visualizations and so on, because I do that for a living, but I decided to make this more of a conversation. So hopefully I chose wisely. All right, so I want to start by just saying I guess you could say my provocation number one, that AI really is a big deal. And it's coming faster than any other technology wave of its scope that we've ever seen. And there's plenty of data to back me up on this. You know, we all have lived through many hype cycles about new technologies, and you can always be sure that there will be marketers pushing the new tech because there's plenty of people who have an interest in it winning. A lot of times when a new technology comes along, it's an opportunity for upstart players to overtake incumbents. And so it's very much in their interest to say, you know, this is huge. This changes everything. And everyone adopt it immediately so that my company can overtake that big player that has owned this market forever. So that's always going on. Since I've been doing this work for a long time, I've seen those cycles. And so you have to bring a certain amount of skepticism to it. And of course, I, as a consultant, and as somebody who's built software that I sell into companies, I have to place my bets very carefully. If it really is the next big thing, I can't miss it. But if it isn't, get on it because I can't afford those kinds of mistakes. So, and so there've been. I'll spare you some of the ones that were overhyped, but this one is real. And even right now, I could mention some others that you've read about, like cryptocurrency and maybe blockchain, if you've heard about that, which is an underlying technology for crypto. I happen to think crypto is mostly scam, and blockchains has only really supported crypto as the main use case so far. So that's one that I had clients ask me about that stuff, 8-10 years ago, and saying, oh my God, do we have to run and race and adopt these things? It's changing everything. And I went and I said, okay, I'll go research it. I looked at it and I said, no, I think you should set this one out. And I believe I was right about that. It doesn't mean people haven't made, windfall profits, but sooner or later, I think that wave will come to kind of a disaster. But not this one. And similarly, here we are in Chicago. It's probably worth mentioning quantum computing, which you've no doubt heard about, because especially Governor Pritzker has made a huge bet on that technology. And the former U.S. Steel plant site is now turning into a big quantum park. And that stuff's all real. And I think quantum computing is a real wave, but it's just much more specialized than artificial intelligence. It will, probably its first use case will be to hack all of the encryption that we've had on using previous computing, and so that's great. And then its second use case will be re-encrypting everything using quantum. And if we're really lucky, we'll for those two use cases, we'll end up where we started. But there are use cases for quantum that are exciting. I don't want to go into that tangent, but it's nothing like the AI wave. And why is that? So first of all, what is artificial intelligence anyway? And so I think for me, as somebody who's been working in the technology world my whole career, I have to say, well, it's just the next in a long line of automation techniques, which is really the case. And because it has come to its full flower here in the last few years, a lot of the other technologies had already been diffused. I mean, you probably heard this technology diffusion phrase, which is just how rapidly and thoroughly does a given new technology actually get put into use by consumers and businesses. And so we have a lot of waves of automation that have penetrated every nook and cranny before this AI wave came along. So this is just another automation wave. That's one way to look at it. But the types of problems that it's good at are different than the types of problems that I've used my whole career to solve problems. And I would say, and this is a little bit simplistic, but I asked AI and it pretty much agreed with me, so I'm sure I'm right. Which is that it addresses probabilistic problems, whereas traditional programming uses deterministic methods. Now, what do I mean by that? So, if I have some code that says, if it's Tuesday, then send out the message, but if it's Thursday, send out the cancellation, that's a deterministic piece of logic. And we've been able to implement those. And of course, in the real world of automation, the applications are massive logic puzzles consisting of that kind of very simple logic, but there's so much of it that when you aggregate it all up, it's very complex. But still, that's at the end of the day, that's mostly what it is. And yes, you might embed bits of probabilistic logic in those primarily deterministic applications. So, you might say, I'm going to generate a random number in this one place. Like maybe I'm doing a simulation, and I'm going to simulate the Cubs San Diego game 1,000 times, and each time I'm gonna say, well, this hitter bats 300, so I'm gonna generate an at bat for them, and that would that would be based on probabilities. So there's a little bit of that in our traditional programming, but now when we look at AI, we're looking at problems where they are fundamentally probabilistic, or another way you could think about it is fuzzy. And another way to think about it is they make mistakes. There's an error rate. If there's no possibility of error, it's either some fuzzy logic that's fantastic, or it's a deterministic problem. So, for example, recognizing y'all's faces. Now, we don't have to do it because you all nicely enough put your name into Zoom. But if you hadn't, Zoom could, if it wanted to, because you've been in previous Zoom meetings, could sit there and say, well, I bet that's Susan Alito because I've seen her face before and she looks the same. And I might be wrong, but I'm going to slap her name on there automatically because with that logic. So that would be image recognition. These days, when I do a lot of draft writing by recording it mostly into my mobile device and letting it turn my voice into text. And then I use other methods to edit that. But that's voice to text is an AI application. Or if you take another path where, you've got a bunch of traditional printed text or even handwritten text, and you want to turn it into digital text, obviously the word name for that is optical character recognition, OCR. We've had that for quite a while, and you can do that. But there's an error rate, right? And there's many other combinations of transformations that AI does, but they're fundamentally probabilistic, and they do this kind of fuzzy logic. And we didn't used to have great ways to do that. It turns out that one of the main metaphors that they use is the way the brain works with synapses and the neural nets in our brain. So neural net programs turned out to be a really good way to mimic the kind of thinking that we do. And so one of the most so a lot of those methods those use cases that I first talked about, like recognizing text on a page and turning it into digital text and the like, they do generate output. I mean, most programming functionality takes some kind of inputs in and produces something out, right? So input, output, that's a very common pattern. But now we have a new category of AI where yes, at a high level, you can say there's input and output, but what's really distinctive about it is how little input and how much output, right? So it's a difference in degree that's a difference in kind. So, I'm sure many of you have used things like ChatGPT. So what you're doing there is you're typing in a natural language, probably English, and it's producing some output from that. But you may type a very short prompt. Like in the men's group, we typed in, what's the probability that the Cubs are going to be San Diego today and the playoff game underway, and cite all of your underlying factors. And it did that with many, many, many pages of data, of text and charts and so on. So we gave it a very little bit of fuzzy input. I mean, after all, the English language can hardly be called some kind of highly deterministic language, right? It's not like programming languages, which have very precise and very limited syntax. it's kind of inherently fuzzy. And then the amount of output we got from that was enormous. That is called generative AI. So that's a specific category within AI. And I think a lot of it is it's basically doing a lot more work to translate a very small input, whether it's coming from a human or any other process, and then it's producing this wildly greater output. So we call that generative AI. And the output can be not just text, but it can be images. It now can be video. You've probably seen some of these creepy fake videos. I like to do comedy. One of my old buddy, who was part of the Two Dans back in graduate school days, sent me a kind of creepy, cool AI generated video of Mr. Rogers, who was a character I played in our shows. You know, walking in front of like various, you know, English war scenes, battle scenes, and, you know, saying Mr. Rogers things. And the whole thing was completely generated. So, that was a prompt, I'm sure, that said something like, you know, generate a video where the television character Mr. Rogers, maybe it told it what to have him say, or maybe it left it up to the tool and to place it into war scenes, or maybe it was more specific about that. But in any case, it was just a natural language input, and then this whole movie came out the other end, short film. So that's generative AI. And really, that came on the scene in 2022 in a big way with when ChatGPT was released to the public. And there's, you know, you can read articles about how China viewed that as kind of the second Sputnik moment for them. And so they really reacted. They had previously reacted to a similar AI leap forward in about 2017. So it wasn't the first time that they decided, oh, we've got to join this battle. But anyway, that's so because AI focuses on these probabilistic problems that deterministic tools are not very good at, it opened up a whole new a set of possibilities for automation, like the kind of automation work that I've been doing my whole career. Well, now we have this whole new set of tools, and what really is distinctive about them, in many ways, is that they automate things that we think of as being fundamentally human. You know, creating, high-level reasoning. You know, constructing. You know, arguments, and the like. And so there is no question. And you know, at this point, I don't think I have to tell anyone here to make the argument that this stuff's getting pretty good at what it does. And, you know, compared to us, if we're out there in the workforce and, you know, we kind of like to work maybe 40 hours a week, and we like our weekends off, and we need to be fed coffee and go to the restroom and all of this. And meanwhile, these automatons, so to speak, are just working 24/7. And so if you think about it, and it's reasonable to think about it in certain ways, as this technology is directly competing with big parts of what used to be just you know, exclusively human labor. And unlike when we went from, you know, like literal horses to vehicles that had horsepower, or then the waves of automation that we did after that, which focused mostly on highly repetitious tasks or hard backbreaking tasks like welding and so on. Now the category of, you know, high level activities like reading X-ray pictures and many other things are all game. In effect, we're all competing with machines now, and these machines have considerable advantages over us. You know, like I said, they never quit, and also they can work at very high speed, so they can be scaled, you know, very quickly. Now, one thing, I'm still just kind of level setting here. Remember, my first provocation is AI is a huge tsunami. It's real. It's coming. Don't write it off as just some hype thing. This time it's real. You know, it is rolling out. I said it's a tsunami, and I use that analogy advisedly, because the diffusion rate for it is faster than any previous technology you want to look at, whether it's the automobile or the telephone, television. I could show you the charts where we can, use some measure of how quickly it reached 50% of the population, and so on and so on. And for AI, it's already, hit. It far exceeded those rates. And then so that's a speed, but but another aspect of it is super multidimensional, right? It's like water pouring down this 11-story building. Sooner or later, it's going to be everywhere, right? If we have if the roof leaks, there's going to be water slowly getting in every nook and cranny of this building and falling eventually on my head. And so that's how AI is too. Whether you're talking about personal life, whether you're talking about organizations, it's not limited to any particular country. It's global. The use cases for it are beyond imagination. I mean, you just name it. Throw a dart into an organization, and there's probably a business process that is a potential application. And so it's going to have these massive effects. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to happen simultaneously. And therefore, it's almost impossible to model them. Anyone who says they can foresee how any particular, impact works 6 months from now is just fantasizing, because it's too complex. Too many variables are changing simultaneously. And that's another thing that's very unusual or unique about this wave. It's everywhere. And so I think this is going to be deeply destabilizing. There's just no question about that. Okay, let me pause there for a moment. Does anyone have any questions about what I've said so far to sort of set the stage for the tsunami? Nope. Okay. Let's go on to another provocation. I think that I'm going to say we're all the computer guy now. Now, what do I mean by this crazy statement? When I first started in my career, I would go to downtown Chicago to show up at a law firm or other places like that. And it was pretty typical for them to announce over the intercom, the computer guy is here. And indeed I was. And what did the computer guy do? Well, anything that needed doing with any computer-related technology that firm had, right? It shows you, and we're talking about more than 40 years ago, it shows you what a kind of early Wild West it was, but also, we didn't have all these roles, because now they would say, the Cisco router IP6, update protocol specialist is here, right? Like this field the division of labor is spectacularly greater now. And everything's been so-called infomated. I don't know if you ever heard that phrase, but that was used for a while. One of our management hype phases was we were infomating everything. Well, we infomated everything, right? And so now no one would say that when you arrive at a business, right? Because we don't have this general purpose, and so it also represented how small the diffusion of a lot of that automation technology was at that point. Only specialists, like the people managing the mini computers and the mainframes and so on in the basement, or it was a highly specialized kind of role. and most of the employees of any given organization were not engaged in the use of that technology. Now we fast forward to today, and that's why I say everybody now is the computer guy or gal, right? All of you have smartphones. All of you have computers. You've been using them for probably decades. And that's just in personal life, but any organizational activities you've done or are doing, have heavily used this computing technology and information technology for a long time. So we're at a very different place now. And so someone like me who claims to be a professional, I went from a world where nobody knew what I was doing except me and my fellow professionals to everybody is also kind of a computer. We're all computer guys now. So what makes me so special? So I presumably I know more. I've worked longer. I am more specialized. But we're all in the information pool now, and so that is the world into which this AI comes. And in fact, it's important to understand that, like all great innovations, they never are standalone, right? Like this AI wave either wouldn't be happening at all, or it would be happening, the slow old, hey, an AOL disk just arrived in the mail. Maybe I should plug it in and sign up for a, email service, and slowly but surely, no, we have a whole bunch of innovations that have already happened that have set the stage for this tsunami, right? So everything from the fact that we all have these supercomputers in our hands, the internet, all of this cloud computing, and all of the traditional, the coverage of the deterministic automation that we already did, the globalization that happened, the fact that use of these advanced technologies is not limited to the EEOC countries, right? It's global, and you have global companies servicing them that have reached enormous scale and have bought up each of the Magnificent Seven so-called companies. I mean, they buy companies for breakfast, right? This is the world that AI enters. And so now, a Microsoft, to just take one company, can throw a switch, and within a couple of weeks, 1 billion users are using a new AI capability that they've thrown into Office 365. That, a lot of things had to happen to get to a world where you could do that. And so now we're all implicated. We're all users of this technology, both in our personal lives and in our organizational lives, and we can't escape it. So that's one of my arguments to you about why you should care about this subject. You should be passionate about this subject. You should have wanted to watch this presentation instead of your desultory coffee in one hand and regret in the other. No, but anyway, because it's a big deal. It is a truly big deal, and you are implicated, and everyone you know is implicated, and all the organizations you love are implicated. So. Okay, that's my provocation on that.
So this change goes in. I don't even know that this change has gone into whatever program I'm using. It just happens.
Well, there's a lot of that has already. So I think we're at the beginning of this wave, right? Even though it may seem like there's already a lot going on, I don't think we've seen anything yet. But for instance, if you use social media of any kind, I don't care if it's Facebook, X, LinkedIn, you name it, all of those platforms thoroughly use AI algorithms that have replaced I grew up in a little town in Nebraska called Plainview, and we had an editor of the Plainview News. And among other things in that paper was the who did what section, which, and if I went home and visited my family over a holiday, that counted. That's news. And that editor decided that was news. No one else, right? And now you have algorithms in those social media platforms that are doing the equivalent of, 100,000 traditional editors making decisions about what's on the front page of your digital newspaper. So that's already there. You don't have any choice about that. That's being done. And of course, that's a good example of it doing mostly for evil, if you ask me, because they basically figured out that, well, what we want, we make the most money if we get the most of your time. And human beings, being as we are, negative emotions get us the most engaged. So the big three negative of fear, hate, what's the other one? Fear, hate, anger. There we go. Fear, hate, anger. Winners. And so if you go out there in social media, Susan, and you post some angry screed, I guarantee you're going to get it just magically, like go out there and just do a rant about how awful this presentation was. And for the first time ever, you're gonna go viral.
Okay.
I hope I didn't give you any ideas.
No, I have a very simplistic question. For example, if I want to know where a certain address is located, it used to be I could just type in that address and I would get a map or something. I mean, someplace maybe in Chicago, and maybe even an option of how I get there, directions for driving there. Now, if I type in that address, suddenly I've got all sorts of real estate people trying to tell me all the advantages of living there and how much I can pay for this and that and the other thing.
You mean you just wanted to go to a party and they
And
want you
I
to buy
just
the
want to know
place?
where it is. I just want to know where it is. And I thought AI was supposed to be time saving, but in fact, it's taking a lot of my time to try and figure out and get beyond all this other stuff they're feeding me.
Yeah.
It
Well,
makes me angry.
yeah. Well, you've probably heard the old line that if you think it's free, you're the product. That's how you're paying for your free search, is they're throwing all of that. That they figured out all these clever ways. The reason they're putting those advertisements in front of you is that they have AI algorithms behind the scenes that have well, first of all, so one of the things that's possible with these technologies is mass customization. Now, to use a political example, you may recall back in Barack Obama's, especially I think his 2012 campaign, he made a great leap forward in micro-targeting their political messages. Whereas traditionally, we all know what everybody is seeing in the messages because they put them on TV and we all see, so-and-so is a terrible human being. He voted against everything good. Well, now you can just micro-target, right? Down to not just to a segment. That was the old advertising lingo, right? You had the empty nester and the this and the that. And these are these market segments, and we're going to target them. But you were still targeting groups. But, eventually, when you get enough data and you have AI algorithms that you can run at super high scale, you can start to give the Susan Alito experience. I mean, you're having a unique experience interacting with that tool thanks to AI, because it not only knows about that address you're searching for, but it knows a whole bunch of other things about you, much of which it shouldn't know, but it does. And so it's optimizing it for you. You don't happen to be in the market for buying some real estate, do you? You're muted.
So, well, I have done some because my daughter wants me to move. Also, she's in Vancouver and I want her to get a house. And so I have done a little bit of real estate stuff.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's how this works. I mean, there's other nefarious. So you have a little illustration there of how this mass customization down to the individual works. And at least in this case, they just want you to, you know, buy real estate. That's their purpose. But, you know, I, for example, was part of the hack some years ago that of the Office of Personnel Management. 20 million Americans like me who had ever sought any kind of classification, you know, clearance. I at one point had the lowest level of that you can get. But I was in there. They asked all kinds of questions. Who's your janitor? Who's this? Who's that? Well, that was hacked, probably by the Chinese. So they're sitting on 20 million, you know, sets of data like that are the most intrusive kind of data you can imagine, just that one set. And you can well imagine if you combine that with this generative AI, where you could tell it, send a very attractive email to Susan based on, you know, hey, this is your janitor from across the way, and your dog Bitsy was just out in the courtyard, and he ate my credit card, and I was wondering if I could borrow your number for just a day, and I'll give you cash for anything you know. And you're going to say, "Oh my goodness, I love our janitor. That's a terrible." So you'll probably not only give him the number, but, you know, a nice email. So that you know, that's going to happen, and you know, it's going to, if we think that you know, we're going to hear, you know, that the Nigerian king or whatever that whole scam was the end of the story. We ain't seen nothing yet in terms of that kind of personalized messaging, both just for pure sales purposes as well as for nefarious purposes. I don't know if I answered. I
find
answered.
it very scary.
Yeah, no, it is. It is scary.
Question, Dan.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of examples where seniors might want to use artificial intelligence in some ways. So if you're trying to deal with an issue like genealogy research, or if you're on a condo board and you want to investigate how do we plan a tuck pointing job, and what's the process for that, and how do you avoid scams? Or if you've inherited a funeral plot in California that will never be used, and you're trying to figure out how to properly sell it. So things like that. Do you just type a question into a URL and you don't know if AI is involved at all, or do you need to download the JP app, you know, and work from that app? Or for like genealogy, you can pay $50 a month and use a genealogy service, but does AI feed into that database of stuff as well?
Yeah, well, those are good questions. And I want to encourage, you know, despite all of the risks here, I do want to encourage everyone here to learn more about this, to treat this like a subject that should be in your queue of things to read more about, but also to use. Because I think we all have to be knowledgeable citizens, and also that there are plenty of ways of getting benefits from this technology, and basically avoiding almost all of those downsides. So so maybe in that, if we do another session that's more of like hands-on, like I'd be happy to show, you know, a bunch of use cases for using ChatGPT and other tools like that to answer questions like you're talking about. I have come, you know, I would say in my own practice, for maybe the first 2 years after ChatGPT came out, I would have to say, given all my time experimenting, trying to figure out what it could do and all that, and then the answers I would get, that I don't think I had crossed the line for getting value for money. You know, but starting about maybe 8 months ago, and I would say the first real benefit I got from it was this research project that I talked about with the men's group on the art and science of improv. It's a particular weird project of mine. I really started to figure out how to use it to do, in that case, the equivalent of literature reviews, to figure out what existing research had been done in these very weird interdisciplinary fields that I wanted to approach. and I found and so suddenly I found myself in like a very rich ore, and it was it was a creative endeavor. I had 40 hypotheses that I had developed since Second City days that I wanted to research. And I always they always kind of was my second priority, right? Like, am I really supposed to push that to the top of my queue ahead of, a paying project with NASA or something that's like never made it? But that project accelerated my work just dramatically, and it got me really excited about it. And I was still the principal investigator, right? It was basically just the research assistants I didn't have anyway. I mean, it's not like, I guess if you're sitting at the U of C in a lab and you've got all the humans to do this work, you never felt the gap, but I didn't have anyone to do anything yet. I hadn't sought money yet for this project and so on. So for me, it was like, it made I felt like I was in flow. I was generating ideas. I was starting with all my ideas. So I didn't feel like, I'm substituting a machine for creativity. So there are ways, and since then I have been now that I've kind of gotten the feel of how to use this as my research assistant, to dig up data, and I'm very carefully. I tend to define and think about the things I'm asking it as hypotheses. And I want to know what the evidence or the research is, even if it's a business question or something. It doesn't have to be science per se, but I find that approach has been very productive. It has moved my work along, and then you read those things, and then you go off and read, other sources that it's referenced. So there's definitely a way, and I don't care what the subject is that you're interested in, right? Like that. Maybe the weirder, the better. I mean, like, I don't know what expert could I go consult with on how do I construct testable, operationalized research on the science of improv when essentially it hasn't been done. So yeah, that plot question, and I don't know if you were just making that up or if you actually did inherit a plot.
A little of both, yeah.
Okay.
But now question here is, so you put out that question, and then suddenly you're inundated. Your mailbox is full of all these ads and
No.
So
So that's
half
where,
the day trying to get rid of it.
yeah. No. Here's where I guess I have to say, like that point I was making of, if it's free, you're the product. That's really true. Their business model is not free, is for grins. So like I use, for instance, ChatGPT. I pay $20 a month. It's not free. There are no advertisements in there at all. No junk. It does know about my prior searches, and it knows, for instance, that from a technical stack standpoint, I tend to use Microsoft technology. I've always partnered with them and gotten customers from them and so on. So it's figured that out from the kinds of queries I've asked. So now I notice that when it offers to, would you like me to create a chart with that data set that you just asked me to create? It says using Power BI. Just happened to guess that, yes, that's what I want because that's a Microsoft technology. So but assuming they're not sharing that, and they claim they're not, outside of my scope of work, because it's nobody else's business what I'm querying here. But anyway, I believe that I am working in a cocoon, which is my stuff. And the fact that it has a memory of all the things I've chatted, and then you also can organize your chats into what are called projects. And then, as I showed to the men's group, once you've got all of your chats for a project in one project, you can write queries that are restricted to that pot. And then you can say, like I did in that case, summarize my 40 hypotheses based on, because for each one I initiated a query and asked about it. And give me a catalog and organize it by theme and do this and this and that. And so I'm using the accumulated work I've already done to produce summaries of that very work. And that's just super powerful. And I don't feel like, I mean, obviously anything can be hacked. Organizations can always fail to follow their use rules. But I feel like the way I'm using that tool, for instance, now, and the way I use the co-pilots in Microsoft Office, where they have similar, I'm paying for it. They claim they don't share any of my stuff with anyone else. I'm referring to, like, I didn't show this because I decided not to go the PowerPoint deck route, but I have, I don't know, 40 pages of notes I've written on this subject. And I told it to make a PowerPoint deck out of it, my stuff. And it did a pretty good job of it. If I wanted to inundate you with slides, I could have. But anyway, so yes, and if we do a separate session that's more hands-on, how best practices for using this stuff, I'd be happy to show that. But I think there's definitely ways that no matter what you're interested in, whether it's politics, ancestry, history, any discipline, I mean, almost any subject you can think of, there are interesting ways to dig deeper, to use it as a digger.
Okay, so I'm glad I'm retired now, because if I were a teacher, I would be terrified, because how do you construct a test or ask for a term paper when everybody has access to AI?
Yeah, well, I know some teachers, and I've talked to them about this, and they have real problems. Even in computer science, I know somebody who's a teacher, as an instructor at DePaul, teaches hardcore, like, how do you write a compiler, which is a software tool for turning text of a piece of code into an actual piece of software that executes. And he has them write a compiler during the class, and he has problems where kids will come back, and turn in a compiler that's completely generated. They didn't learn anything. They didn't write anything. They didn't learn anything. The whole purpose of the whole educational process is defeated. And he spends his time having to use AI tools to check, to try to suss out whether they used an AI tool. And that is a big net loss, right? And I strategized with him. I think the best idea that we had there, and of course, what you really want to do is just, I don't know. Back in my day, we had the honor code. What happened to that? Apparently, it's just gone. But anyway, I suggested, if you are for real doing it, whether it's a writing job or anything else, as a human being, you have to work iteratively at it. And if it's an ambitious undertaking, it's going to take a while to keep shaping it and improving it until it's finally complete. And so what I suggested to him, I think he's going to try this, is introduce milestones along the way where people bring their work in progress and share it and talk about it, and do that 2 or 3 times before you get to the end. So because nobody doing this for real is going to have a whole compiler done at milestone 1, unless they're like the world's greatest genius, and that should be so. Then what are you going to do? And I'm sure that some of those students are going to be clever enough to tell their favorite AI bot to generate a compiler 1/3 done. And they're going to bring that, but then they're going to ask it to do 2/3, and it's going to be a totally different. Anyway, I think that will work pretty well. And it would also get at the fact that this is about a process. This is about gaining in skill and knowledge, and it's collaborative with your teammates and with your teacher. And so if I think that would naturally eliminate a lot of that cheating. Okay, so let me get. We've been commenting along the way. I'll get you one more provocation, because I've got plenty more, but we don't have time for them. But this one I kind of like, which is AI is going to make us sloppier. That's my prediction, and I mean that both as individuals and in our organizational lives. Why do I think this? Well, I think it because, first of all, we've already been sloppy. There's a baseline of sloppiness that I observe. And, because mainly it comes from, we like to cut corners. right? And if there's in an organization, if there's a place for everything and everything in its place, okay, if you're a super neurotic, organized person, maybe that doesn't grate too much, but most people, don't do that perfectly. They haven't been doing it that way. And I can give an example in my consulting. There've been for many years platforms that you could build that would let you organize all of your documents and other content, right? And you put, that it's in different sections, and there's trees, and it's in categories and subcategories and all of that, right? And there is a place for everything and everything in its place if you do that right. So we help organizations sometimes put those systems in and get them started on the right path. When we come back in 5 years, it's time to upgrade. And I ask the standard question, so let's talk about migrating your existing data. And about 2/3 of the time, they say, oh, we don't need to do that. It's a big mess. We're starting over. So I've seen that pre-AI. And, things like being able to search through those documents, even pre-AI ways, was already a kind of an easier out for a lot of people. So what I think will happen now is that tendency will just get worse. And so because the mitigation of your bad practices is helpful enough that it will make them seem less bad. So I think you're going to have many, many more circumstances where effectively people just throw stuff in a big pot and expect AI to sort it all out. Because now, it can, like for instance, let's say you have this document library, and one of the things that's going on there is that documents are going through various revisions. Let's say there's 7 copies of a document out there that range from draft 1, draft 6, and then final. Okay, in a properly organized system, there will be information out there that systematically identifies that status, right? So it's deterministic. There's no question about it. If you want to get the final contract or whatever it is, you go get it. Well, I think now what people are going to do is just throw all that stuff out there, let AI dig inside the documents, kind of suss it out. Maybe it can use the dates and figure out, well, that one was edited last, that one's probably final, and turn it into a probabilistic problem that's good enough. And I think one of my comedy characters I call the Great Slapello. And he has a tagline. He says, I am the Great Slapello. Whoops, I dropped something. So he's just like this inherently sloppy person, kind of banging his way through life. And I just think, I think both at the individual level and an organization, another bigger picture area that I've seen in organizations that makes me think this is, one of my mantras is, it's the system, stupid, which is that, whenever you look at organizations, you need to look at the systems, the subsystems, how they all interrelate. You think about all of the business processes, and they cut across organizational boundaries, both within the organization and to external organizations. And that's when things get really painful, because people they find it painful to collaborate. I mean, I've made a joke over the years that and I'm serious about it though, if I go to a client and say, I have proposal A and B for you for how to solve your problem, A costs twice as much, but you won't have to collaborate with any other department. They're gonna go with A. They're gonna say, now let me get this straight. I don't have to collaborate with all those guys. Let's do it. I mean, honestly. So we've already been cutting corners where there's pain like that. And in order to get the full benefits, the productivity out of AI as kind of the latest, hotshot tech here, the fundamental things still apply, which is, that chaos is not your friend. Running off in 1,000 directions doesn't yield productivity. Individuals in large organizations, no matter how cool their own, private use of technology is never really move the bar for the whole organization. And so there's this hard stuff you have to do that now includes AI plugged into it. But I think people will cut those corners because I think I feel certain of it because they did it. They did it before. So anybody push back on that? You think we're going to get neater and tidier and more disciplined? Anyone? Bueller?
What about all these tidy up programs that keep coming up, offering themselves to me?
Well, like everything else, right? You can put this technology to good and ill, right? And so there are ways that you can, if you want to build really streamlined processes now, as you go through I wonder what our existing process looks like, right? Let's design a process. What is it? What do we think how much work is it going to take, and where are there going to be exceptions that we have to handle with, in a special way, and all of that analysis and project management and so on, you can use AI to do that more effectively. Or another example that I've seen in the startup community, most startups, companies have one big idea and they just kind of pursue it. Whereas if you look at the way venture capitalists operate, they have portfolio. They might evaluate 100 ideas and pick 2 and expect, only 1 out of 10 to make it. So they sift through many, many ideas, but the people who are staking their whole lives on a business plan often just look at one. And I think that thanks to AI, it's very cheap to do some early due diligence on, let's say 5 different ideas you have for something you want to pursue, to do more due diligence. So you can consider more ideas, and that the ones you select for not I'm talking about for startups, but ideas in any sphere, there's ways of using this stuff that's pretty exciting. But for every one of those, I can think of a terrible scenario. So it's up to us to that's kind of my big closing point, I guess, right? We have agency here, both personally and in the organizations we're in, and then in making our voice heard in politics, because we have some terrible leaders right now, which is one of the and we're already as a society in some big, I call it the knowledge base problem. There's just we already are in a bad situation, and now this tsunami is going to hit us, and that's the thing that terrifies me the most. I don't see how, as a society, we remain stable so that we can actually and that we have the leadership we need, which needs to be. Now is the time for a Lincoln, right? We needed to be lucky, and we weren't.
That's not a note to end on, and there are some questions.
But yeah. So you can, and I want it to be the case that when you go to that politician's town hall, you're the one standing up and asking the super irritating yet profound question about AI policy. That's your job. Be that super irritating, knowledgeable citizen. Okay, any other? I can stay on a little longer. What are the questions?
Oh, there are some questions in the chat. I'm sorry, I've asked all the questions and I've dominated. I'm sorry. Everyone else should chime in, but there's a couple of questions. Patrick Fay, do you want to ask your question, or shall I read it? Patrick asks, I've noticed how searches lead AI to focus you on ads and possible scams. Facebook leads you to virtual lockdowns or to virus lockdowns. How would you comment on that? Or here's
thank you, Susan. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. All right. And thank you, Dan, for your excellent presentation. Yeah, I'd like to see a follow-up if Susan and the powers that be can arrange for that so that we can do some practical uses. The reason I'm bringing that up is I just got through the Pro 17 iPhone, which is pretty much AI lockdown in terms of what you can and cannot do. It sort of makes its own decisions. I'd like perhaps I should take a class at Apple to get better informed. But yeah, the devices that are coming out now are AI generated. A lot of them are involved. Do you have any commentary on that?
Well, I think I already said one of the recommendations I would make is pick uh you know trustworthy offerings and pay for them, because if they're free they're going to be ad funded and or other promotional considerations, and I know you probably don't want to hear that, but you know that's one of my recommendations. The other thing that if we get into a more technical deep dive, one of the reasons you're seeing this AI centric focus on these new devices is, and you may already know this, but they have what are called NPUs, neural processing units, which are specialized AI processors that are on the device. So whereas if I'm sitting in ChatGPT, whether on my app on my phone or whether in a browser, all of the processing is being done in the cloud, in these data centers you hear about. Whereas when you have, now that we have more and more devices that are AI enabled, meaning they have these, it's not just NPUs, it's also GPUs and some other specialized processors. But most of the new high-end devices you buy now, whether it's a PC or a smartphone, have those specialized processors in them. And that means that it can decide, oh, I don't have to send that part of the query up to the cloud data center. I can do it right here. And if you're talking about an activity like when I'm sitting there doing voice recognition by recording and text on my phone, well, having a local processor would be nice because it means that the speed can be better. But anyway, it is tying you much more to the device, to its operating system. It's probably why you feel like it's locked down, because they want to manage that division of labor between the smart device and the cloud.
I've noticed that also, like an email, it's sort of like substitutes words that I didn't initially intend, actually typed it. I have to be mindful of those quotations and use those more often. But when you go back and you edit your emails, I noticed they stuck in words that I didn't want in there. So,
well, here I would say the fundamental things still apply too. There's nothing to stop you from proofreading your stuff.
right.
I strongly recommend it.
I would too. Thank you so much for your help, Dan.
Yeah, some of those basics. Like at NASA, I did this fancy analysis of surveys they did of safety, and including people saying, reporting where they thought there were safety issues, like a given hallway is slick and people have fallen there and all kinds of things like that. And then they're saying on the Likert scale from 1 to 7, how happy are you with this and the other thing. And so I present all this fancy slice and dice stuff, but then I told them, look, there are a huge number of comments that these people have written for the survey. Some of them are in all caps. Some of them involve 7 exclamation marks in a row.
Oh my gosh.
And I recommend the advanced parsing method called reading.
It does help once in a while.
Like, don't turn that into just this abstract. I mean, the data is fine to know where you have issues and so on, but and another one, by the way, in the email case, since many of you probably have email now, where there's an AI agent that offers to summarize your email. you got to be really careful with those because that's another hacking surface, of course. And hackers who send out these personalized emails know how to put things in it like text that is you can't see because it's white text on the white background. But but they can trick the AI summarization tool into treating it just like part of the email, and then they'll put their hacky stuff in that text, and the summary will come out and which you're going to trust, right? Because
Right.
and it's got the phishing attack right there in the summary. So I mean, unfortunately, we have to be forever vigilant. And there's always these there's always good and evil in this new tech.
Yeah.
I think we need another session.
I was just going to say that
Oh, come on. This is such a small topic.
one of the
No,
questions
I haven't had time to ask any questions.
Yeah, and one of
We're out
them
of time. We need another session.
one of the questions is how do we protect ourselves from all this data that's collected about us? And that is definitely another session, I think.
Well, I mean, one of my calls to action is that I really want people to treat this as something that you take as that you put at the top of your priority of things that you want to learn more about, right? And we have. Well, I mean, one of the ways that we can all benefit from these new technologies now is, continuing education. It's the golden era of self-education or continuing education. I always felt like, and I still believe this, and I'm a big liberal arts fan, that the purpose of college is to motivate you for lifelong learning, period. I don't care if all you learned about in college was football plays. If you came out motivated to learn, it worked,
Right.
and now we have the means to I feel like, now when I set out to learn something, I can have this like super high octane experience. Now, of course, you could spend that whole time watching, crazy TikTok videos. And we know from the data that that's how most people are spending their time, is on video games and TikTok and Facebook and a bunch of stuff like that. But at the same time, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. The best stuff is out there too. And, like I subscribe to 8 high quality publications, The Economist, Atlantic, etc., New York Times. I never used to be able to do that. And if you did, your apartment would be overrun with paper, right? So the best is available globally. So I don't, there's no reason for us to act like, we can't learn this stuff, anything. We can now learn anything we set our minds to learn. So this, I think, should be on your list because it's going to be enormously important for us as citizens to understand this and to be wise voters, and it's going to impact you personally. It's going to impact everybody. It's young people. I mean, I encounter a lot of young people, especially I've been lately going to a lot of Chicago tech meetings and meetings of startups and venture capital and that kind of stuff. And there's lots of young people there. And wow, is this a tough time for young people going out into the job market? Because in part because by definition, if you just got minted from college, you are a junior person, and AI is bashing hell out of you. There's maybe I'll show this one thing. I haven't.
Well,
can I show you one?
While you're looking,
picture?
let me just say, I mean, we are over time, and I really don't want to take up too much of your time, but maybe you could look up that and maybe allow one more question or what?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to stay as long as you like.
Mary Bolt's been trying to ask a question, and I keep interrupting her. I'm sorry. Mary?
I'm one of the persons who has to another Zoom to get to, and I would love to continue talking. And I think there is so much more that merits discussion that I hope, Dan, we can convince you to do another talk with us.
I haven't looked at what you had to say about me in the chat yet, but I wanted to, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm very passionate about this subject, as you might be able to tell. Here is one thing I'll show you, and we would do a lot more of this in a hands-on thing. So this is in ChatGPT, but I asked it to build what I called a techno-utopian org chart with numerous specialized bots and agents reporting to a small human council. Right. So I don't know. You probably could find this in some science fiction book, but I really do think that I can kind of tell from talking to business people that this is dancing in their head. It's one reason why they're hesitant to hire, is because they think their org chart's going to look like this. So here you know, chief visionary overlord, chief values steward, chief ecosystem diplomat, council of model governors. But this is AI, right? So these are 3 humans in this made up thing. And then what's reporting to them is a hierarchy of AI bots, right? So there's an orchestrator who kind of, you know, orchestrates these specific agents. And then here you have these agents organized into, you know, these different departments. They're all virtual. So you have research and reasoning, the research and reasoning department. And in there's a scientific literature minor, hypothesis generator, experiment designer, simulation runner, causal inference analyst, mathematical prover. And remember, these aren't jobs. These are AI tasks in this. I think that, I mean, I wouldn't, if I showed this to, if I pretended this was my recommendation and showed it to some you know, business executives, they would think it's great. I mean, I'm sorry, some people would think it's great. And you know, so some of this is going to happen. Now, you know, will it look like this? No, but product and experience. This also gives you an idea of what kinds of use cases there are if you just look at it within an organization. What kinds of things could AI assist with or replace? So, you know, you can just read this for yourself. Narrative storyboard generator, localization international agent, meaning take the work and turn it into, you know, generate it in different languages for global markets, and on and on and on. There's your customer success person. Anyway, it's pretty interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
See, creepy. It's like many things in this field. It's creepy cool, right?
Yeah.
Like your first thing is, wow, that's cool. And then your second thought is, that's really creepy.
Yeah. Well, I really, some people have to leave to go elsewhere, and I don't want to keep everyone too long. And we are way over time, but I want to thank you very, very much. I think I learned a lot, and I'm also confused.
Good. That just means you have to learn more.
And are you recommending that we all buy ChatGPT? Subscribe to it?
Yeah, the $20 a month version of ChatGPT is quite good. There's no advertising in there. I haven't. They you know, it seems to be using the data just for me. To my good.
Just finishing up.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we're good.
I think we have a mute.
A mute issue.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I hope we can follow up, because we all need, you should give us a homework assignment and then come.
Oh boy. You
Well,
really want them to hate on me.
One homework assignment could be to just read the transcript of this presentation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have other things. If we do a deeper dive, for instance, I have a glossary of terms in this, both technical and non-technical in this field. And, not that you need to master all of them, but, I'm sure you've seen plenty of acronyms and things and you wonder, what is that?
Right.
But I also could, if for a future session, I mean, I could point you to some, I don't know, I guess just a range of articles. You may not have subscriptions to all the publications. So for instance, the Wall Street Journal has a lot of good articles on AI, including quite a few just in the last week that I thought were really good, but you may not subscribe to that. But I could come up with a list of articles across a range of publications where you might have access to some of them.
I would like something very specific that was teaching us to use one particular thing, like maybe just something focusing on ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that. That's kind of what I did for the men's group. I spent the whole time on that one project that I did, which was this funky art and science of improv project. But yeah, we could, I going back to my teaching days when I first got into this field, I did a whole bunch of teaching because I was the computer guy. That's how I became the computer guy. I was 10 minutes ahead of my students in some cases. But what I always love to do, and I still love to do, is you bring what you're interested in, and we just do it on the fly. Let's just do it. You got a question, let's get started with your project and start asking questions, and then do follow-ups, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of directions we could go in, and we could spend the rest of the afternoon, but I really think we need to let you go back to your day job.
Go back to being sloppy.
I want to thank you very, very much, Dan. This
Okay,
has
thank
been
all of you. This was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to doing it again.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
All right.
Very much, Dan.
Thank you.